Hello everyone, welcome to this introduction to Clik Remote Engineer. I hope everyone is safe and well. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through Clik Remote Engineer and we're going to go through everything you need to see in Clik Remote Engineer. So let's just have a look at the agenda today just to show what we're going to go through. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through what is Clik Remote Engineer, and we're going to look at the engineer login access, and then we're going to walk through Clik Remote Engineer. And through that walkthrough, you'll hopefully get some tips that you can use, or if you're thinking about Clik Remote Engineer, then you'll know what you can do with it. All right, okay, so unfortunately today we're not going to be doing any questions at the end of the session. That's just due to the amount of people that are on this particular webinar. However, if you do have any questions, you can contact your account manager, and you can also email us at hello@kliksoftware.com. And you can phone us on 0117 902 2012 after the presentation. Okay, so what we're going to do then is the engineer login. We're going to talk about that and what Clik Remote Engineer is. So basically, Clik Remote allows your engineers to access their jobs, relevant documents and data whilst they're on site, and they'll also be able to create quotes. They'll be able to create purchase orders as well. You can control what that engineer sees, and also the engineer will be able to see a view site history as well. That can be really important. They can see historical jobs as well potentially on there. Now, one of the things that I want to quickly go through is a lot of people might have Clik Jobs and are wondering what the differences are with Clik Jobs, and I will go through that just now. So just bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to populate a little the difference between Clik Jobs and Clik Remote Engineer. So Clik Remote is a web-based application. And what that means is that you'll be hosting it as a website. So it's basically a website that your engineers will go to. Now, what that means is that you do need to be online to use Clik Remote Engineer. With Clik Jobs, you can be offline. Now, what you can do, and these are some of the differences, is that, for example, viewing site history, you can't do that in Clik Jobs, but you can do in Clik Remote Engineer, and we will go through that. A few other things that you can't do as well. You won't be able to view documents in Clik Jobs. You won't be able to view unassigned jobs, but you can do that in Clik Remote Engineer. So the engineer has the opportunity to see unassigned jobs as well in Clik Remote Engineer. They'll be able to select rates in Clik Remote. They'll be able to choose their stock locations and do van stock as well. They won't be GPS tracking on Clik Remote Engineer, but you can do on Clik Jobs. So there's one difference there. But as you can see, there's a lot more you can do in Clik Remote Engineer. But the important difference is that you have to be online all the time. Right, okay, so what we're going to do now is we'll just quickly go back to the presentation. So you should see that there. And we'll just go to the next page. We'll just go about the available modules that are in Clik Remote Engineer at the moment. So what you've got your jobs, so the engineers can see their jobs. There's purchase orders and quotes, so the engineer can see and create purchase orders and quotes. They'll also be able to see a diary, and they'll be able to see documents based around the site or the equipment potentially if they need to. They'll also be able to fit in their timesheets, and there's also F-gas as well. However, we won't be discussing F-gas in detail because we actually already have a good webinar about F-gas that you can find on our website, and it's called an Introduction to F-gas, and that goes through how the engineer can use F-gas on that webinar. Right, without further ado, we're going to have a little closer look at Clik Remote Engineer. However, we are going to start in Clik Service because we're going to talk about setting up those engineers and the privileges that they can have and what they can do, and sort of the things that you can do with that engineer in terms of their privileges. So I'm just going to open that up now. So we're in Clik Service. Hopefully this is all familiar to you. And we're going to set up the user for Clik Remote Engineer. And to do that, we're actually going to go into settings, and you'll notice Clik Remote, and you'll notice manage users and settings. And in here, you'll see a user that I've already created. Now we're going to pretend that we've created Paul Jones. So I'm just going to double click on Paul Jones, but this would be what it would be like. You would see at the beginning, you'd be able to create the user's name and password. But the next thing that you're going to be doing is you're just going to be looking at the privileges. And we're going to go through some of the important privileges that you might find on here. So obviously you've got communication, You've got CRM. Are you going to allow your engineers to create customers when they create jobs? You can do that, or you can deny that. So that's one thing that you might take into consideration. Are they allowed to edit dashboard widgets? Are you going to give them access to the dashboard widgets? And we'll go into a bit more detail about what they are in a minute. But basically, there's little small reports or counter widgets that tell you, for example, how many jobs you got today, how many jobs you got this week. Are they going to be able to access the diary? Are they going to be able to access documents and terms and conditions? Are they going to have access to F-gas? So, for example, if you don't use F-gas in your industry, you might just deny all this because there's no point in them seeing it. So other things that you might do as well, you'll notice, and an important one is, are you going to allow your engineers to export to Excel? Are you going to allow them to sort of do mini reports on their job sheets they want to and be able to export from there? So those things that you might deny. Are you going to allow them to upload the company logo? You're probably not, so you might deny that, for example. Can they view reminders, that sort of thing? So those are quite good. The export to Excel is probably an important one to decide on what you want your engineers to do. And then you've got your jobs one, and we'll go through these in a bit more detail. So again, are you going to allow your engineers to access documents that are on the job? So they can allow or deny there. Are you going to allow them to add products when there's no stock available? So you're still going to allow them to select a product even if there is no stock available. Now, you might deny that if you want to be in control of your stock. Can they complete any job? So these are jobs that are unassigned. Are you going to allow them to complete that? You may deny that access, so they can't complete any job. They can only complete the jobs that they have been assigned to. Are you going to allow them to create jobs? So they can create jobs in Clik Remote Engineer. So you're going to allow them to do that. Will you allow them to create a PDF of that job as well? And maybe email it and send it off to the customer at the end of that job? Deleting, editing, those sort of tools. Can they edit completed jobs? You might not want them to be able to do that. And then there's one here, could only edit a job on the date the job is due. So that means that you're being really constricted here. You're basically saying you can only edit that job when that job is due on that date. Otherwise, they won't be allowed to do that, and you might allow that or deny that. I've unticked it so I can edit it whenever I want. Okay, can they select products from any location? And this is very important with regards to stock. So basically, without this privilege, the user is restricted to the stock on their own vehicle. So in this case, if they've only got a van, they only can take off stock from that van. They can't take it off from another location that is within the business. Can they view the site documents? So basically, again, it's those documents that are in the site, so they're allowed access to that. Can they do that? Can they view unassigned jobs? So you might untick this and they can only see the jobs that they're assigned to. Are the job notes going to be visible? In this case, I'm allowing everything for this particular user so I can show you everything, but you might say, I don't want my engineer seeing those notes. Which is perfectly fine. Okay, so planned work visits, can they access them? Can they view them? That's in the contract bit of the engineer, and we'll go through that in a bit in Clik Remote Engineer. And can they access the purchase orders? And it's all the kind of different privileges that you've got here. Can they access quotes? Can they create PDFs and all that sort of stuff? And can they look at site and equipment history? In this case, it will only be site history, it won't be equipment history. And also, can they have access to their timesheets? Yes, a majority of people will do that. And can they edit their own? You can also put that in as well. So those are the privileges, really important step before you sort of go into Clik Remote Engineer. So we're going to click on next, and we're going to come up with some little more settings as well. And they're very familiar to Clik Jobs. So if you're familiar with Clik Jobs, these are very similar sort of privileges as well. What we're saying here is engineer Paul Jones must complete the following tasks before completing the job. What that means is they can't complete a job, or Paul Jones cannot complete a job until he's added a time item, he's completed the action list that might be on a job sheet, he's put in the actual work done, he's added a signature, and he's added a document, which could be a photo, for example. Okay, so we're going to click next again. And we're going to just look at some of the print templates or reports that you're allowing your engineer to have access to. So in this case, this particular engineer is going to be able to print out the engineer job sheet, the quote, maybe a refrigerant system, and maybe a purchase order as well. And that means not just print, it also means they can email as well. So they could email that straight to the customer when they've completed a job, they might send them that job sheet. Okay, so we're going to click on next again. And then we're going to look at what we call dashboard widgets. So there's various dashboard widgets that you can have and you allow your engineer to see and put onto their own particular dashboard. And if they want to edit that dashboard, they can remove it or add it as they wish. So what we got here is we just got a few that I've put on. So jobs scheduled for today, jobs this week, my outstanding jobs, jobs complete this week, jobs outstanding by status, SLAs achieved this month and SLAs achieved last month. So you can see how well that engineer is doing in terms of SLA targets and stuff like that. Okay, so we're going to click on next, and then at the right at the end is about creating a password for that user. And all you need to do is make sure that you've got a good strength of password, and you literally just click save user, and that's done. And then the engineer is ready to go onto their Clik Remote site. So now what I'm going to do without further ado is go onto the Clik Remote site so you can see that. Okay, so let's just bring that up. So here we go. We've got Clik Remote, and the first screen that you've got is the dashboard. So here we're going to see the dashboard, and you can see some useful information that the engineer will want. So potentially the engineer will like to see how many jobs he's completed this week, outstanding jobs, jobs this week, and jobs scheduled for today. Now, what's great about this dashboard is that you've created this, and if I just wanted to see what I've got today, and I've got that dashboard there, all I need to do is click on it, and I'll be able to see the jobs that I've got today and what's scheduled for me to do. Now, whilst you're in the dashboard, obviously I've got all the privileges, so I can actually add new ones if I want to, because I have those privileges for Paul Jones. So let's just click on add new, and you can see there's lots of different dashboards that I could choose from because I've got access to that. And there are also some charts or reports that I also have access to, which you'll see in here. So let's just go back again to the dashboard, and we'll just see those charts as well. So you'll see here, we've got SLAs achieved last month and SLAs achieved this month. It just shows you true and false, basically, how well you're doing in terms of achieving those SLAs for that particular engineer. So this report is based on the engineer's jobs. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to click on one of these dashboards just to see the jobs that we've got scheduled for today. So for example, I'll click on jobs scheduled for today. Now, when you'll do this, you will see something here at the top, and it will say this list is currently filtered using widget search criteria. So it's very important that you will only be able to use, it will just be that filter for that dashboard when you go into it for these two jobs that we're seeing for that particular, from that particular dashboard. So for example, let's click on to a job sheet. So I can click on a job sheet from here. So I can just click on the number, or I can click on the title, and that will enter into the job sheet. But before we do that, let's just talk about the columns at the top here as well. So basically, you'll notice you can change these columns. So you'll notice a button here called Customize. So if you click on Customize, you can select which columns you wish to put on. So for example, if I wanted equipment make, equipment model, equipment description, I could put that on, and now if I slide my box, I can see those details in there. So the engineer does have the flexibility to be able to customize that as well. What they can also do, you can drag and drop your columns as well. So you can drag and drop your columns and view them in a different way. So for example, you might want title to be there. So you've got your job number and the title of the job. Okay, so we're just going to enter into a job sheet and go into a bit more detail about what will happen when the engineer goes into their job. So let's go into this one, job 11. So as you can see, it's come up with the details of that job, and I can see various things about that job. So I can see work to be done, boiler not working, and I can see various things around that job sheet. Okay, so the next thing that I can also do is I can potentially click on add, and I could then potentially add the time items of what I've done on that job. So for example, I click on add, I click on time, I can select my engineer, so I am Paul Jones, and I can select the times that I've worked. So in this case, let's just say we did 10 o'clock to 11, and I can just select the times that I want. I can select the rate as well. So in this case, I'm just selecting a normal rate. I can also go into mileage. I could put my mileage in here. So I could put mileage if I needed to. And I can also click on my travel as well. And at the moment, travel is a work rate as well. So you could add your travel time too. And then once you're happy with that time item, you click on save, and that'll be saved. And you can go down to the details, and then you will see your time items in here. Now, what you can do on your time items, you can also click on view details, and you'll be able to see the details of that time in there as well. And if you scroll across, the engineer will be able to edit it or delete that time. If you've given them the right privileges to be able to do that, that's what they will be able to do. Okay, so that's adding a time item. The next bit is adding materials. So you can add some materials to this. So potentially it might be that we fitted a new boiler because this boiler was completely broken, and we're going to put another boiler in. So what I might do is I might go into materials. What I can do, I've got the option to just add any product I want, or I can go on to select. I can click on boilers, and I can see that there's 2 boilers currently that I've got in my van. I can click on that, or in a location somewhere else if you've given your engineer access to all the stock locations. But in this case, it's just going to be from Paul's van. So Paul's van is going to get that particular boiler and install it for this one. So I'm just going to click item status installed. I'm going to save that. And then that material item is in there as well on the job. Now, the next thing that you might do, you might go and click on documents to see if there's any documents, or when you want to take a photo whilst you're on site. So if we click on document, you can click on choose files, and this could be on a laptop, Android device, iPhone. It will just open up your folders basically, where you'll be able to pick the pictures that you've taken if you need to. So for example, I'm going to click on here. I'm just going to click our logo. I'm going to click open, and then that logo is in there, or that image is in there that you want, and that document is attached to it. What you'll also be able to see is if you keep scrolling down to the details, you will see description, and you'll be able to view that document as well at this point. So the engineer will be able to see that document there too. Okay, so let's now go into the action list. So as you can see, there is an action list at the bottom here, and I'm going to need to fill that in because I've said to Paul he needs to fill in the action list before he can complete a job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my action list. I'm going to go to my view details of that action list, and I might have multiple action lists here. An action list are kind of just tasks that you want your engineers to do whilst they're on the job. So for example, I've just got one called things to do in here, but it could be that you're doing a maintenance checks and stuff like that. That's potential that you could do for your action list as well. But I'm going to click on edit, and I'm going to say, okay, check site is safe. I'm going to tick that. The engineer could also put a comment on here as well. So all safe on this site, so they can do that as well. Take a photo. Yep, I've taken a photo, and they might put some more information on there if they want to about that particular action. But that's what I've done. I'm going to close that. That action is now complete. So you can see it's 100% complete. You might have multiple action lists here. That is the potential that you've got there. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to click on add, and we could look at equipment as well. So at the moment, we can just see the equipment in here. So you can see that there is a boiler, and the good thing is I can click on that boiler, and then I can see some various things about that boiler in here. I can see some notes and potentially a document. So you could have a manual of a boiler or an air conditioning unit or any units that you want and you think will be worth it to have there for your equipment. You can have that document in there, and your engineer will be able to get onto that and be able to look at that particular document, which could be a manual, for example. So that is quite handy. Okay, so you're going to save that. So that is on there. That's on the job, that piece of equipment that is faulty. So the engineer could go on that boiler, he could decommission it, for example, if he needed to, and put in a decommission date and then save that. So that's something that you could do if you need to. Okay, so the next thing is if we click on the details screen again, we're just going to go through some of the other bits of the job as well. So we click on add. If you needed to, you could add another piece of equipment. So you could click on equipment and you could add another piece of equipment. So that boiler we've just installed, you might get your engineer to go and put that information in about that particular boiler. So we could do that. That's the sort of thing you can do. And I'm just going to add that new, so that new boiler is added in potentially for that site. You can go into add as well. And because I've got access to, I can go to engineer. I could, if I wanted to, potentially add another engineer if I needed to, but I think in Clik Remote Engineer, you can only add yourself, okay? But if I wanted to create a new job, because I've got those permissions, I could add myself as the engineer for that job. Okay, so the next thing is obviously existing systems and new systems. This is about F-gas. I won't talk about that too much, but we'll go back into work done. So if I click on work done, I can say new boiler installed, for example, and I can save and close that note, and that will be in there. And then last but not least is other notes as well. So potentially if you're giving access to your engineers to have access to other notes, they can go into there, put those notes in. But more importantly, you've got customer signature. So you can click on customer signature, put the name in. They can squiggle on it. So if you have an iPad or an Android, they'll be able to do that. If not, you can use your mouse pointer if you want. They can do it that way if you're using a laptop. But we can save that, and that will be saved to the database, and you'll get a little message at the top just to say that that signature is saved. You've then got your engineer signature as well, so you can click on engineer signature, and you can put the signature in, and I can put it in Paul, and I can tick completed job at this point in time. I click on save, and that's completed. Now, what we're going to talk about as well once you've completed, and this might be good for the office, and I'm just going to show you this now. There's been a little notification. So on my click and in the office, I've just got a notification, and hopefully you can see that just here where it says job 11 has now been completed by Paul Jones. So what does that mean? Well, it means that basically if I click on the view subject, I can quickly go in here. And this is the great thing about Clik Remote Engineer is it's real time. You don't have to do the syncing as you do with Clik Jobs. As soon as you complete the job, it's completed. And you can go and see what that engineer's done. So you'll be able to see exactly what they've done, and you'll be able to do what you need to do on that job and then potentially go and invoice it. So that's quite a good thing to do. We'll talk about property change notifications near the end of this bit, just to show you how you can do that for your Clik Remote engineers, if that's something you're not doing currently. Okay, so I'm going to click close on that, and we're going to go back into Clik Remote. So we're in Clik Remote, and we're going to just go back to the next category. So we did it from the dashboard, which is here, and we've gone into work, and we're going to go into the jobs. So this is my main jobs list. So at the moment, I'm seeing all my jobs and everything this year. So you can see the filter is telling me this year, status is all, category all. Now, what the engineer can do, or you might allow them to do, is they can be able to go to actions. They'll be able to print out this list if you wanted them to, or they could put it into Excel. And obviously, these are privileges that you might want to give your engineer or not give to your engineer. Then the next thing is obviously customize. We've been through this before when we went through the dashboard angle. But again, you can select different columns, and you'll be able to search for those columns in here. As you know, you've got them in there, and you just select columns you want. You'll be able to see them in here. Now, one top tip, by default, you'll see showing 1 to 10 entries. What you can do is drop that down to 100, and you'll be able to see every single one if you need to, rather than having to go page by page. So once you've done your customization, also you'll be able to just scroll down here, and you'll be able to see a little bit more. And what you can also do is you can hide this menu list as well by clicking on the 3 bars. And if you wanted to, you can just see a bigger layout if you need to, of just that jobs list. And if you ever need that layout again, just click on the 3 bars in the top left-hand side, which is over here, and that will bring back up that menu as well. Now, obviously, you've also got filter as well. Because we're not coming from the dashboard, we can use different filters now. So we're going into jobs, we're going to go to click on filter, and you can see that I've got my filter set from this year. And what's really good is that it could be a case that you only want to see a particular time. So for example, my date range, I only actually want to see jobs that I've got this week. So I can click on this week, and it will just show me the jobs that I've got this week. I can also, because I've got that privilege, I can include unassigned jobs as well. So I could click on that, and then our more jobs will pop up that haven't been yet assigned, and I can assign myself one of those jobs if I wanted to. So that's something you can do in Clik Remote Engineer that you definitely can't do in Clik Jobs. Okay, so I'm just going to click on today just to see the jobs we've got today. And I'm going to go to status complete, and then you'll notice we got those ones that are complete. So we've got the one that we just completed here. If I click on the filter again, I might say, well, actually, I want just ones that are all and are outstanding. So I click on outstanding, and I've still got that one job left that is outstanding at the moment. So I will need to have a look at that. Okay, so what I can do as well, I can filter my jobs by this search function, and that's pretty good as well. I'm just going to get a few more jobs in, just so we can get a few in. And we'll do this week, just to show you how that works. So for example, I've got lots of jobs in here. If I start typing this, and it could be anything, I could type anything like brewery group, for example, and it will start it will start populating the customer brewery group in there, so I can quickly find it. If I put the job number in, for example, if I put 18, it will populate and the job number will come through. So this is a really handy search tool to search for the jobs that you require. Okay, so that's quite good. Right, the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to add a new job. So I'm an engineer that's given myself permissions to be able to add a new job. So you'll see here at the top right hand side, just below where it says Paul Jones, I can click on add, and I can click on new job. And I've also got the ability of new job template as well. So for example, if I click on new job template, it will select a few templates. So for example, I've got boiler install. So if I highlight that boiler install and click OK, it's going to fill predefined information for me. And what you're also going to notice as well is that I've got another property notification that's just told me on Clik back in the office that Paul Jones has just created a new job. New job has been created by Paul Jones on Clik Remote. Obviously, it doesn't know the site yet because he hasn't actually created the site. But what we're going to do is you'll notice here, I also have the option of creating a new customer. But all the engineer needs to do if he's going to create a new job is start typing in details of that customer. So if I type in brewery group, it's going to populate anything with BRE in it. So there's 2, but we're going to click on brewery group in this instance. And we're going to select the location address as well. So if I click on the Fox on the Hill, and then I can start putting in some details. But you'll notice boiler installs already come in, categories come in, fault codes come in, because I've used that job template. And work to be done, please do a boiler install. So, I've saved some time. I don't need to write in everything. So all I need to really do is click on save, and that job has now been created. And I'm at this point where I can now add other things to the job. So for example, if I wanted to, I could click on add, I could click on equipment, and I could add a piece of equipment in there. So that would be in there if I needed to. So that's quite handy. Okay, so the next thing that you might do, so let's go back to our job sheet list. So we're in our job sheet list. Let's just have a look at a completed job, for example. I might decide that I've completed that job and I want to send it to the customer. So you'll notice there is a button here called actions. So there's one called print and there's one called email. So for example, if I wanted to email that to a customer, I could go to email and I could go to job sheet and I could email them that job sheet. So you will be able to do that too once you complete the job, and the engineer can do that as well. You just need to put in the email address you're sending it to. So I'll put in my address, and then you can type in, hi there, attached is your job. And all you do is click on send, and then that will send out. Okay, so that's pretty much how you get actions and email. You can also print as well. So if you do have the luxury of a portable printer, that's no problem at all. You can print it or save it as a PDF if you want and maybe attach it to the job. You could do that. So you could click on print, you could click on job sheet, and it will bring up there, and then you can do a couple of things in here. Here's your print preview. This is what it looks like. And you can click on the print button, or you can open a file, or you can click on download, and then you could save that as a PDF. So you'll notice in the bottom right-hand side, left-hand side, sorry, there is web PDF with that job sheet in there. So you will be able to do that as well. Okay. Other functions that you've got is tools. You can copy jobs as well. So if you're in a job sheet and it's going to be exactly the same for another job, you could just click copy job and you have that ability. Now, what we're going to do actually is we're going to go into something else now as well. So we're going to talk about activity within the job sheet and what you can do once you're in a job. You might have completed it, or you might not have completed it, and you need to purchase some materials for that particular job. You can do that at this point. So I'm going to go to a job that I haven't completed. So this one's assigned. It could be a call out. It could be that the boiler's broken down and you need to buy a new one for them, or you need to quote them for it. so you can quote. So I can go to that job, I can click on activity, I could click on quote, I could click on add quote, and I could create a new blank quote attached to that job sheet. And again, I've got a property change notification. It's from Clik that's telling me quote 3 has been created by Paul Jones. And straight away, the office will know that he's created a quote. So whoever's dealing with quotes might want to go in there and have a look to see what he's done. But we can click in there and then I can start creating my quote. So I can click on add. I can add my time to the quote. I can add the materials. So I click on materials. I might find a boiler. And then that might be part of my quote in there. So I save that and that's attached to that quote. The next thing that you could do is you can click on actions and then you could email straight away whilst you're on site or print it off and give it to that particular customer. So that's one good thing about Clik Remote Engineer. So you have the ability to create quotes on the back of a job sheet if you need to. Okay, so again, when you're in a quote, you'll be able to see activity and you'll be able to see the job sheets that it's been connected to. But more importantly as well, you could also create a purchase order from a quote. You can create it from a job sheet if you want to. We'll do it from the job sheet. So we'll go back to our job. We'll go into the activity of the job sheet and we're at a supplier and we need to purchase a particular item. We can click on add purchase order. We can also do new PO from selected items. So if there's items in that job sheet or material items that are already in there that you need to buy, you can do it straight from there, but you can also do new blank PO and you can put the items that you want to buy. So I can click on add, materials, go to select, find my boilers. So I can filter in here, find my boiler, press save, and then I can go and email that to potentially the supplier, but I'd have to click on edit on here and I just need to put my supplier's name. So let's just find the supplier, ABS Garages will do. And then I could potentially email them by going to actions, clicking on email, and then emailing them that particular purchase order. So again, the engineer can do this all straight away from Clik Remote Engineer. Okay, so that's really kind of the jobs element and being able to create quotes from jobs and create POs and everything from there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to just drop down to diary and you'll be able to see some diary items. So this is just giving the engineer a view of his diary. Now, from here, the engineer can add their own appointments. So they might have a dentist appointment or whatever, or other appointments. They can add appointment. They can just click on that box and they can add just a simple diary item, which they can also make private as well. So they can do that if they need to. So they can do that on the diary page. So we're just going to select that. But you'll notice also you've got your diary that's just telling you what you've got. So for example, it's telling me all the jobs that I have. And what I can do is I can actually access the jobs from here too. So I can actually just click on the number, for example, and I can go back into the job. So that's the diary. But you can also view a few other things in the diary as well. You can click on events and you'll be able to see diary items, holiday, any callbacks that they've got, and any contract engineers or engineers that he's in terms of part of a contract visit as well, which we'll go through in a bit in visits here. As you can see, there is a contract visit planned in for Friday in there. It's just a visit, there is no job. But those are the sort of things you can view in the diary. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to go into timesheets. So timesheets is where you're going to see a list of activity of what your engineer's done. And how the timesheets is governed is by the time items on the job sheet. But also there'll be blank items where the engineer will have to select an activity to explain what he was doing within that period. So I'm going to give you an example. So for example, as you can see, I've got my Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays all filled in, automatically filled in with the job items that I put in. But you can see on Thursday between 9 and 10, there isn't an activity of what that engineer was doing. So the engineer needs to put in what activity he was doing between that time. And all he needs to do is select that activity. And it could be administration, break, lunch, could be travel as well. You could do that activity in there. And you can create these activities if you need to in the timesheet settings. And we do have a great KB article on timesheets on there if you need to learn how to do that. But you simply just select that activity. And then that's it. and then you just do the rest for the morning as well. What was he doing between 11 and 6? Because we haven't put a time item in, it could be something else, it could be workshop, for example, like that. And then once the engineer is happy the way his timesheet is filled in, they submit that timesheet, and then that goes into the office, and they'll be able to see that particular timesheet. Okay, so we're going to go down to quotes, so sales and quotes, which is the next thing. So you'll be able to see the quotes that we just created. But again, it's a case of you'll be able to do some customization in terms of what you're viewing up here. So for example, if I click on customize, I can put in total gross, total net and stuff like that if I want to see it. And I've got my little bar at the bottom here where I can just scroll over and show those columns that I've just added in. Again, if you've given the engineer that access, they'll be able to print or put it onto Excel. They can again use the filters as well if they need to. Again, filter quotes by search, so you're just typing in the name and it will populate in there with that particular quote. So you'll see that quote. So that's quotes, and again, if you need to, they can add just a quote without it being related to a job sheet, and that's simply by clicking on add, and again, new quote or new quote from templates if you do have quote templates. So if you click on add new quote, again, you can just start filling in a standardized quote that you might want to put in. You got your prefixes. It's the same as it is in Clik Service, due, required by, when's it required by, a reference. So you've got all that in here. You've got your drop down boxes as well. You've got your statuses as well. So preparing quotation, for example, who's the responsible user, Paul Jones. I can put some notes in there, click on save. And again, I've got my notification that's coming up from Clik Service to saying that Paul Jones has just created another quote. So those are the things that you can do in here. Now, the next one is purchase orders. So again, you can create purchase orders just as a standard. You don't need to create it from a job sheet and activity purchase order. You could just create, you're allowing your engineer to create a purchase order as and when they need to. And it's simply just a case of clicking on new purchase order in the top right hand side. And again, you've got your actions where you can print or do Excel. You can click on customize to customize those columns if you need to. And again, you've got your search, you'll be able to search in here and you'll be able to show certain entries that you need. So that's the quotes and that's the purchase orders. The next thing that you've got is also your contract visits. So in terms of, it could be visits that are due for a certain period this year. So I've got two here on the 16th, I think it's every Friday. Not necessarily a job's been created for them, but basically it's just showing you what visits are going to be coming up in the future potentially. So you can click on those visits and it will just give you details about that visit. And if you go to activity, it will show you if a job sheet is related to that visit. In this case, it is. There's a job sheet 13. It's already been created for them. And then you can just click on that job number and then go from there. But those are what contract visits are. It's just showing you a list of your visits. So potentially you might have a lot. Again, you might use the show entries to 50, 100 to show more if you need to. And again, you can click on customize and you'll be able to, for example, I'd find the columns jobs probably quite useful just to see what jobs those visits are relating to. So you've got that to hand if you need to. Okay, so that's really kind of a little overview of Clik Remote Engineer. And there is this FGAS function as well. Now, I'm not going to go through the FGAS because we've got a great webinar on that already, Introduction to FGAS, and that will go through everything on here in terms of how you do FGAS on Clik Remote. But we are going to go through a few other things on Clik Remote Engineer, and one of them is the settings. So in this case, these settings are really, really important or can really help you. As you noticed, there's one called Dashboard Auto Refresh. So at the moment, that is not enabled. So that means I'm not getting real-time information. So what might be better is if you actually do click on that, and that will refresh every 5 minutes. So the engineer is receiving up-to-date information every 5 minutes on his device, and he'll be able to see that on his dashboard. You can also change the default landing page. So when I log into Clik, it's automatically going to the dashboard. However, the engineer might say, do you know what? I prefer to just see my list of jobs. And that's absolutely fine. You can change that, and you can change that setting there to work jobs as well. There is also a dashboard default search type, and I haven't discussed this at the moment, but there is a sort of global search throughout the whole of Clik Remote Engineer. And at default, the search type is actually called job. So for example, you'll see at the top, right at the top here, I'm going to see if I can just get my little tools out actually just to highlight that. So you'll see here, there is a search box. And at the moment, you'll see that it's got job. And what you can do is you can basically search a number in here. So if I start putting 11, it's going to find me that job number 11 in there. And what I can actually do is select quote number or purchase order number as well if I need to find a particular one that I want to. It's just another way to search through the system for the engineer. But in settings, that default search type is saying, do you want it to be job? Do you want it to be quote number? Or do you want to do purchase order number? Diary schedule item label, it's just labeling it. Do you want it to be the job number or do you want it to be the title of the job? So at the moment, we had it as job number. I might actually want it title, which will say call out, for example, or service or something like that, or whatever you've called the title of that job. And the next bit is a login screen custom logo. So this means I've given privileges for this engineer to actually change the logo of the splash screen when you enter the site. I would advise that you only give this to one person, maybe a manager, and they can change the logo, not to everyone. But that's what you should do. Site update, you can give your engineers access to update the Clik Remote site, but I wouldn't advise that. So that's absolutely fine. You don't need to worry about that. Just don't give them that permission. So that is your settings. And then you've also got help and support. So this is where you can get some guides. It's a getting started guide about Clik Remote. So you can view those guides on here. There's quite a lot of support articles, and there's also our contact support. We've also got leave feedback as well. So if you need to leave some feedback, you can do so in here. You can go to our newsletter as well, and you can sign up for our newsletter if you need to. And you've also got version history. Now, this can be important because you get an understanding of what things have gone into Clik Remote and what we've done on that update. And you can just click on version history. So I'll just open in a new tab there so you can just see that. And you'll see that you've got all the product updates, and you'll be able to see all the different product updates that we've done. So that is quite handy just to see what we've done. Now, last but not least is documents. And I'm going to show you a little bit more about documents and how you can add documents as well now. So at the moment, I've got a document just for this engineer. And what I'm saying is all my engineers are going to have access to certain documents. This could be terms and conditions about how they should act at work or whatever. You could put them directly in there so they've always got those documents to hand. This isn't related to a site. This is literally for the engineers. And I'm going to show you how you do that in Clik Service. So as you can see, I've got that document, and all I need to do to open it is I simply just click on it, and I can open that document, and you can see in the bottom left-hand side that PDF is opened. In this case, it's just an ICIC certificate. So what I'm going to show you is how to do that in Clik Service. So I'm going to bring up Clik Service. Just bear with me 1 second. So if we go into settings and we go into settings again, you'll see modules and you'll see Clik Remote. Now in here, you'll see engineers. You can actually do it for sales, Clik Remote sales as well, but you've got engineers, and you'll be able to click on new, and you'll be able to store a document in the database. So I'll just do one now. So I'll find something just, I'll just find anything really, test, press open there. So that document will now be able to be got from that engineer. He'll be able to see those documents. There's also a couple of other things in here that might be useful as well. So you've got job status visibility. It could be that you don't want your engineers seeing certain jobs with certain statuses. So for example, you might not want them to see cancelled or in progress or whatever, or on hold. On hold, for example, you don't want to see that it's on hold or unassigned. You can hide these statuses from your engineer if you want to. It's similar for Clik Remote customer as well. You can hide those statuses. You know, for a perfect example, for a customer, they might not want to see awaiting parts or something like that. You just want to say in progress. So those are the things that you can do with job status visibility. Okay, so we're going to go back now to Clik Remote just to show you how that item is in there. Now, I'm just going to need to refresh my screen, but there you can see that document is in there for that particular engineer. Now, what we're going to do is we're also just going to go into a job sheet, and we're going to just talk about documents that you might find on pieces of equipment on the site. So I'm going to click on one of my job sheets. Now, as you can see, I've got my equipment here. So I've got details, activity, equipment. And if I click on my equipment, I've also got access to documents that piece of equipment. I think we've been through this before, and it's just, again, just showing you that you can put manuals and stuff like that. But also what you can do is you'll be able to view documents particular to that job as well. So if we scroll down, you'll see those documents in there. If your particular office has given you more documents that you need to have access to for that particular job, they might attach them to here. Although we just added, say, a photo or something in this case, they could potentially put more documents in there as well. So that is quite useful. But what's also very useful is the ability to also be able to see site history as well. So what you can do is when you're in a job, and you might be thinking, I wonder what's happened before with this particular site. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can go to site jobs and you can click on the view history screen. And that's going to show you a list of other jobs that you've done with that particular job. I'm going to just filter and maybe make it for this year. Yeah, that's the only job we've got, but that will give you a list of all the jobs that you've done for it. But what's great is that you can go and actually access that previous job as well to see what maybe the previous engineer has done on that particular job. So that's quite a useful tool. So being able to see historical jobs on your job sheets, and you can't do that on Clik Jobs. Okay, the next one is also site documents as well. So there might be site-specific documents that you need to view. So what you can do is you can click on site documents, you can click on view history, and you'll be able to see any documents for that particular site as well, if there are any for that particular site. Okay, so that's probably it now for the introduction for Clik Remote Engineer. But there's one last thing I just want to quickly show you, and that's back on Clik Service. And we were talking about the various user settings that you can do. And we're going to click on Manage Users and Settings. But there's another thing you can do. You can restrict your engineers even more if you want to in what they view and what they see in Clik Remote. Now, we didn't in here, you've got your usual privileges in here. But there could be things that you might want to restrict them even further. For example, seeing monetary values and stuff like that potentially. They won't ever see cost, but what they might be able to see, you might not want to see charge out and stuff like that. So what you can do is you can click on the engineer, and you'll see this button here called a View Manager. Now what you can do is you select the user that you wish to put, and that's going to load lots of other little things. So I'm just going to populate that now. So that should come up in a second. He says, hopefully. That will come up in a bit, and hopefully it will give me a list of various little details that we can amend. It just worked for me. There we go, brilliant, quality. So what I can do now is I can click on job sheet, for example, and I can say, well, actually, I never want my engineer to see the total net. You could do that if you wanted to. They couldn't see those sort of things if you want. You can also take away anything of these from here, and that means it won't display when you're on Clik Remote Engineer. So it's just another thing that you can do in terms of restricting things that you want your users to see in a display format. Okay, but be aware, this doesn't affect the templates. So if you've got the stuff in the template and they print it, then you're going to have to think about maybe different templates that the engineers can do as well. But it will just be how it's displayed in Clik Remote Engineer. Okay, so that's something you can do. And all you need to do is tick the things you don't want to see and click Apply To. And you can apply it to all modules to current user, or you can apply it to all multiple users as well if you need to. So it's just a little useful tool that I don't think many people are aware of, and that's the View Manager screen in here. You've also got your widget manager as well. So if, for example, you want to create a new counter widget, you can do that for that engineer in here. And we do have a good KB and article on that if you need to. Okay, also you'll notice in here, if, for example, you want to disable that login for that engineer, you can click on Disable Login, or if you need to suspend it as well. Okay, that's probably it now for an introduction to Clik Remote Engineer. What I'm going to say is what's next. So basically after this webinar, there'll be a little survey to do that. But if you've got any suggestions of future webinars that you want, then please obviously put those suggestions in. And to get in touch with us, you just need to call 01179022012, or you can email us at hello@clicksoftware.com. If you're looking at getting Clik Remote Engineer, obviously speak to your account manager, and they'll be able to go through those details with you. Thanks very much for watching, and hopefully you've got something out of this, and speak to you all soon.